You wake up to an alarm that you've learned not to snooze too many times. Not because you're disciplined in some heroic way, but because the day works better when you don't rush it. You get up. You check your phone. Messages, emails, maybe a quick scroll through headlines or social media. Nothing urgent. Nothing alarming. Just the usual noise of a normal morning. You get ready for work. Or log in. Or head out. Your life has structure. Predictability. A rhythm. From the outside, it looks like you're doing well. You have an income that covers your bills. You're not struggling to survive. You're not drowning in chaos. Your life isn't extravagant, but it's comfortable enough. You can afford groceries without checking every price. You can say yes to dinner sometimes. You can handle small surprises. If someone asked how things are going financially, you'd probably pause for a second, then say, "Yeah, it's fine." Or, "Can't complain." And you'd mean it. Nothing feels broken. There's no dramatic problem you're ignoring. No huge mistake you're trying to undo. No crisis looming over your head. You're doing what you were supposed to do. You went to school, or learned a skill, or worked your way up. You showed up. You stayed consistent. You made reasonable decisions. You avoided obvious traps. You didn't go crazy. Your life makes sense. Your home, whether you rent or own, feels appropriate for where you are. Your car fits your situation. Your expenses feel justified. Your lifestyle feels earned. You're not chasing luxury. You're not trying to impress strangers. You're just living the life that matches the version of you that exists right now. And that's exactly why this is hard to notice. Because when you look at your life, nothing looks wrong. You're not failing. You're functioning. You're responsible. You're doing what people like you do. And if there is something off, something slightly uncomfortable, it's vague enough to ignore. A feeling you don't have a name for yet. A quiet sense that despite doing everything right, things don't feel like they're moving forward the way you expected. But there's no reason to worry. At least not yet. It started quietly, almost imperceptibly. Maybe it was the promotion at work, the one that didn't double your income, but changed how you thought about yourself. Suddenly, you weren't just someone who works hard. You were someone who moves up. Someone who earns a little more, who deserves a little more. You didn't ask for it consciously. You just absorbed it. Or maybe it was a purchase, a new car, a slightly bigger apartment, that extra feature in your home. Nothing dramatic, nothing flashy, but enough to make a statement. Enough to whisper to yourself, "This is who I am now." You notice the way people talk around you. Colleagues, friends, neighbors. Subtle hints. Casual comparisons. When we upgraded, now that we've moved, people like us, and somewhere, deep inside, it settles. If I'm someone like this, I live like this too. It isn't vanity. It isn't recklessness. It isn't greed. It's identity. The kind of identity that sneaks up on you without a checklist, without conscious permission. Suddenly, your decisions feel natural. You justify them not with thought, but with belonging. The spending, the upgrades, the lifestyle, they aren't indulgences. They're signals of who you've become. And the quiet discomfort begins. Because somewhere in the back of your mind, you realize, you didn't choose this life purely for yourself. You didn't wake up one day wanting more. Instead, life, and subtle social expectations, told you this was the version of you that belonged. This is how people like me live now. And just like that, your lifestyle starts shifting, softly, quietly, almost invisibly. The changes aren't loud. They don't announce themselves with fireworks or alarms. They creep in quietly, one reasonable choice at a time. You start ordering lunch a little more often because the day feels longer than it used to. You take the occasional convenience over doing it yourself, an extra subscription, a small service, because, well, it saves time, and your time feels more valuable now. None of it feels extravagant. None of it feels wrong. You buy things that fit your life. A slightly bigger apartment, a slightly newer car, furniture that matches the tone of your home. Each choice alone makes sense. Each step seems small, even responsible. And slowly, without noticing, your spending has shifted to match the person you've become. The person who deserves these things. It's not indulgence. It's alignment. It's adaptation. Every decision feels logical. Every choice feels earned. And yet, if you pause and take a look at the pattern forming, you sense it. Something is changing under the surface. You haven't gone overboard, you haven't made a mistake, but things are subtly moving away from where you thought you'd be. It's relief, because nothing is wrong on paper. And unease, because something about the quiet accumulation of choices doesn't feel entirely under your control. This is behavioral drift. Not rebellion, not error, not recklessness. Just the natural evolution of your choices in alignment with the version of yourself that society, and you, told you to become. On paper, things look fine. Your income has grown over the years. Raises came. Promotions happened. You've earned it. And yet, something doesn't feel like progress. Your savings account hasn't grown the way you expected. Investments are there, but they're modest, tucked away, and largely forgotten. Each month, your money flows out almost as quickly as it comes in, covering fixed costs that have quietly expanded over time. The mortgage, the utilities, the insurance, the subscriptions, they all add up. And each one feels justified, necessary, earned. You're not overspending. You're not careless. You're making reasonable choices. But those choices, small, sensible, invisible, have accumulated into a reality where your options are shrinking. Flexibility is quietly disappearing. A lost bonus, a missed paycheck, or an unexpected expense would no longer be a minor inconvenience. It would feel like a breach of stability. Your life now depends on your income showing up the same way every month. You're not broke, but the safety you thought you were building has been replaced by subtle dependency. Your progress has stalled, not because you failed, but because your lifestyle expanded alongside your income, silently keeping you tethered. And if you pause to look around, you might notice that the walls have already closed in. Not dramatically, not catastrophically, but enough that you realize growth isn't just about earning more. It's about preserving freedom, choice, and flexibility. And that's the uncomfortable truth of silent financial stagnation. Even when you're doing everything right, the structure of your life can quietly trap you without you ever realizing it. It doesn't hit like a disaster. There's no shouting alarm or sudden crisis. It comes quietly, almost by accident, maybe while scrolling through your banking app, or glancing at a bill, or hearing a coworker talk about taking a few months off work without worry. You see the numbers laid out, the same numbers you've always seen. Income, expenses, savings, everything appears normal. And yet, something clicks. A subtle thought forms, I'm more dependent on this income than I realized. It could be a small comparison. A friend casually mentions investing extra time instead of money. Someone else talks about the freedom of living below their means. And you pause, thinking, I work hard, I earn, I do everything right, but my choices haven't made me freer, they've made me reliant. It's not panic. It's not shame. It's quiet recognition. A moment where you see clearly the chain of small, rational decisions that led to a life where your financial freedom is quietly constrained. You don't feel like a failure. You feel alert, observant, a little uneasy, yes, but mostly aware. And awareness, is the first step toward noticing the drift you didn't see before. For the first time, you can look at your life and think, I need to see this for what it is. I need to understand how I got here. Take a step back for a moment. Look at your story from the outside, like you're observing someone else's life, but it's really yours. What you're experiencing isn't failure. It isn't laziness. It isn't ignorance. You weren't careless or reckless. You were following the path you thought was safe, the middle-class blueprint of stability and responsibility. But here's the subtle catch. The very choices that felt responsible were quietly shaping your identity. Promotions, purchases, lifestyle upgrades, small conveniences, they weren't just spending or habits. They were signals to yourself and the world. This is who I am. And with each signal, your life adapted. Not dramatically, not with intention, but naturally. Comfort, security, belonging, they nudged your spending and lifestyle in directions you didn't consciously choose. And over time, those small, reasonable decisions compounded, creating dependency on the very income that once felt like freedom. It's an identity trap. The trap isn't obvious because it doesn't punish you visibly. It rewards you with social acceptance, status, and alignment with cultural expectations. But it slowly replaces freedom with responsibility, quietly tying your life to the income you thought was just a tool. You weren't trying to get rich. You were trying to be stable. And the world encouraged you to believe that stability is freedom. But in reality, stability without awareness can quietly limit your options, shrink your flexibility, and tether your identity to the very lifestyle you built. This is why it feels uncomfortable now, not because you failed, but because your identity drifted in directions you didn't notice, one small, reasonable step at a time. Take a deep breath and let yourself step back from the details of your life. The bills, the income, the purchases, the routines. Success, it turns out, isn't the size of your apartment, the make of your car, or the labels in your closet. Those things are just signals. They don't tell the story of your freedom, your options, or your control over your own life. What matters is how much flexibility you actually have. How many choices are truly yours? How easily could you pivot if circumstances changed? How resilient are you to surprises, small or large? You realize that it's not about judging your lifestyle or comparing it to others. It's about understanding what each choice demands from you, and whether those demands align with the life you actually want. The question shifts. It's no longer, can I afford this? Now it becomes, what does this require me to keep doing? And in that question lies clarity. Quiet empowerment. You start seeing that control is the currency that matters most. That awareness alone already changes how you experience your life. You can continue enjoying your comforts, your routines, and your achievements, but now you see them not just as lifestyle markers, but as commitments. And understanding those commitments gives you a sense of agency you didn't notice before. It's subtle. It's calm. But it's powerful. You don't need a dramatic overhaul to reclaim control. You don't need to sell everything, move to a cabin in the woods, or quit your job. Change starts quietly, with awareness. The first step is noticing where your choices are driven by who you think you should be, rather than who you truly are. Each purchase, each upgrade, each small comfort doesn't need to disappear, but you can begin to separate it from your identity. Just because you earn a certain income doesn't mean you have to live exactly like someone at that level. Start with small adjustments. Pause before your next purchase and ask yourself, am I doing this to signal who I am, or because it actually serves me? Reevaluate subscriptions, recurring expenses, and lifestyle habits, not with shame, but with curiosity. Slowly, options open up. You notice where flexibility was hidden behind convenience, where freedom was buried under routine. You don't lose comfort, you gain perspective. Each subtle decision begins to shift the balance back toward control. You might choose to cook at home a little more often, or delay a purchase you automatically would have made. You might reconsider whether a bigger home or a newer car actually adds value to your life, or simply confirms an identity you've inherited rather than chosen. It's not radical. It's not heroic. It's quiet, intentional, and entirely doable. And with each small step, you remind yourself that your life isn't defined by your income or your possessions. It's defined by the choices you can make freely. This is the kind of course correction that doesn't break your life apart. It simply restores the margin, the options, and the quiet control that you didn't realize had been slipping away. Take a moment and just look at your life as it is. No judgment. No labels. No comparing yourself to someone else's story. Just notice. What you've seen here isn't a warning. It isn't a critique. It isn't a reason to feel shame or guilt. It's a mirror. A quiet reflection of the small, reasonable choices, the identity shifts, and the subtle patterns that shaped your life. Patterns you may have never consciously noticed. If this feels familiar, it's because it was meant to. Not to point fingers, not to alarm you, not to make you feel behind. Just to help you see, with clarity, the reality of how identity and lifestyle quietly shape your options and freedom. And now that you've noticed, you have perspective. You can move forward with awareness, calm, and intention. You can choose, gently, steadily, what your life looks like, instead of letting it shape itself around who you thought you had to be. This isn't a failure story. It's a mirror. Take it. Reflect. And when you're ready, Share it with someone who might need to see their own reflection too.